Welcome back, everybody. So, as you know, history is a humanistic social science. It therefore requires the careful marshalling of evidence to support your conclusions. But where do you get this evidence? In other words, this micro-module is about research. Before treating the different resources, both online and offline, that you might want to consult, however, it's important to lay out a few basic principles. As mentioned before, research is not about finding all the evidence. It's about finding the best evidence. Such sources of evidence are normally divided into two categories: primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources are historical documents that are contemporary or roughly contemporary to the period you're interested in. In the case of the history of the Industrial Revolution, examples might include letters between industrialists, scientific treatises presented to the Royal Society, minutes of the meetings of the Bank of England, company records, tax returns, and the like. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are works of scholarship by modern historians, including books, articles, book chapters, and other miscellaneous works. For instance, Kenneth Pomerantz's The Great Divergence, or E.P. Thompson's The Making of the English Working Class, both published since World War II, but dealing with events that happened several hundred years ago, are good examples of famous secondary sources. In world history, these secondary sources might be written in a variety of languages, including English, French, Japanese, Italian, Spanish, or even other languages. When thinking about secondary sources, there are of course likely to be some grey areas, especially if you're dealing with more contemporary topics, or the beginnings of historiographical traditions. For instance, Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire was published in the late 18th century, but deals with a much earlier period. But in general, most sources will fall into either the category of primary or secondary sources. If you have any other questions about this or other aspects of the research process, you can always talk to your professor, TA, or academic counselor. Many, if not most, of the sources you will need are available online. And of those, the majority are accessible through the library catalogue. Indeed, one of the most useful skills you can acquire is to master the in and outs of the library catalogue, its contents, search functions, and limitations. This will allow you to access the right resources quickly and easily from anywhere in the world. Please note the various filters that are available for you to home in on the most important sources. These will change over time, but will normally include things like the date of publication. As a general rule, for most topics in world history, there are likely to be foundational works published in book form in the 1920s to the 1930s and 1950s to 1970s, followed by a proliferation of more detailed scholarship, much of it in ever more specialized journals in the last 40 years. Availability. Some sources are available in print, others online, and quite a few in both formats. Location. Sometimes there are multiple copies of a book, some of which might be available, others not. Type of publication. Most items will either be monographs, that is to say books on particular topics, or standalone journal articles. However, in addition, you will probably also find exhibition catalogues, databases, CD-ROMs, and perhaps even other formats. That is to say, lists of books and articles related to a particular topic. These are particularly useful if you want to find as much information as you can on a very general topic. For instance, the British economy between 1800 and 1820, before narrowing in on a particular issue. On its website, the University Library also provides access to several subscription-only bibliographies, while a simple Google search will reveal a large number of online bibliographies related to particular topics. Bibliographies found on the HNet website are created by academics and are particularly valuable. In addition to searching keywords like Victorian, economy, or England on the library catalogue, you can also search directly for articles and some books through JSTOR. This is normally slightly more fruitful if you know there is a large amount of specialized scholarship on a topic. In addition, there is a myriad of online sources that you might want to consult. This includes collections of primary sources online, such as artstore.org, a collection of historical images and artworks. The John Carter Brown Library's Luna Imaging website, which contains images from early American history. Archive.org, an incredibly useful collection of non-copyright books and some manuscripts. Archives.gov, the US National Archives, and Pares, a large collection of Spanish and colonial archival material. In terms of secondary sources, many articles and even books are available in e-format through the library catalogue. But you might also want to search the following websites: JSTOR.org, the leading aggregator of journal articles in English, with, as I mentioned before, some books. WorldCat.org, a global union catalogue, and Google Scholar, a searchable database of scholarly research. Individual historians also sometimes post their publications on academia.edu, while increasingly universities will post open access versions of publications on their own institutional repositories. For instance, Harvard's DASH website, the London School of Economics, LSE Research Online, and Durham's DRO. While you will find many, if not most, of the sources you need online, there are also numerous sources that are only available in hard copy on campus. This includes books published by presses that do not offer ebooks, some, especially older journals, and miscellaneous publications of other sorts. When looking for books and journals, the important thing is to identify the alphanumeric call number, which is associated with the location of the item in the stacks. If you have any difficulties in identifying the call number or the location of the book, the staff at the University Library will be able to help you. When retrieving the book, also don't miss the opportunity to browse the surrounding books. Usually, items on the same subject are grouped together, so you may unexpectedly come across something useful. In addition to secondary sources, the University Library also has a small but interesting collection of primary sources related to pre-1900 world history. These are held in special collections and are available for viewing by appointment. Highlights include a late medieval manuscript of a Book of Hours and several so-called incunabula, that is to say, books printed in Europe during the first 50 years of printing. The collection also has particular strengths in the history of medicine, architecture, and Western sinology. If you're interested in learning more, you can find a tour through this link. Furthermore, various colleges have libraries, several of which might be useful for students of world history. In particular, Chung Chi College Library has a very useful collection of books related to the history of religion, and Christianity in particular. By the same token, New Asia College is a good place to start for students interested in the history of Western sinology and Chinese-Western relations. Looking beyond CUHK, Hong Kong has numerous libraries that contain useful resources for the study of world history. In the first instance, the other RGC-funded universities, like HKU, CityU, HKUST, all have good libraries, whose books can be searched and requested directly through the HKAll system, which is available to all students and staff. In addition, if you have a JULAC card, you can go directly to these libraries and examine the materials. For books not in Hong Kong, it is sometimes possible to request copies of individual chapters of books via interlibrary loan, also known as ILL. However, it will likely take a very long time for these to arrive, so this is not normally a good solution if you have a tight deadline. A final alternative is to ask the library to purchase the book. This can be done directly through the purchase request form on the library website or via the History Department's Library Committee. Contact the departmental office for more information on whom to contact regarding library purchases. Whatever the format of the source, it's often important to identify the useful information it contains quickly. A technique for doing this is called skimming a book. It involves first identifying where the book is located via the library catalogue. You then need to go to the online library catalogue and find a book review of the book in a reputable journal. Read this. Then go and get the book from the library. First read the blurb of the book, then the table of contents, then the introduction, and then the bibliography. Only after you have done all of this should you read the book itself. The first 7 steps in this process will likely take you less than 20 minutes and will give you a very good sense of what sort of information the book contains. While it's not advised that you practice this type of extensive reading in every instance, it is a useful scholarly technique to have in your toolkit, especially at the beginning of the research process. A similar process can be followed for articles, although, of course, instead of a blurb, articles have abstracts and do not always have a table of contents.